Coogs House. The Houston Cougars won the spring game. I promise.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. And if you're a Houston fan or just a hater can't say bye, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. I appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen today. And if you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us down below what kind of cheese you put on your sandwich. That's a tease to the bonus episode out today as well. Now, today's episode, the full-length episode, is looking all at Houston Cougar spring football and spring football game on Saturday. We've been breaking this down a lot throughout the week, but we're going to just first initial takeaways in today's episode. If you're looking for Milos Uzan or the basketball transfer, there's a whole separate bonus episode breaking that down out right now as well. So listen to this, let's talk some football, and then go check that out right after. Lots of Houston Cougar content coming your way all week long. I want to talk about the downside of this game is that we didn't get to see Donovan Smith play. What could he bring to the table in this offense? We'll talk about the defense standing up and standing out. But first, let's talk about some individual standouts. And I know that this sounds somewhat cliche in talking about who stood out in this football game. But honestly, I think the winner of the day has to be Willie Fritz. I mean, first of all, he pulled off a spring game. We didn't do this a year ago, and we blamed the weather, right? We actually pulled this off. We pulled this off at Carl Lewis Field. We got this done on the track field. All of these things actually happened. There was a record crowd there of nearly 3,000 people, right? You had it streamed on ESPN Plus. All of these things are in the positive direction for Willie Fritz and the program. He got out without any major injuries on the field, right? Big move, big positive reaction for Willie Fritz. And frankly, the moment I doubted him, and I'm going to be honest, I saw this and said, I don't know if I like that. Houston went with an all offense in white and all defense in red, quarterbacks in black. Obviously, you don't hit them, but didn't go a traditional one team's that got offense and defense in white, one team's got offense and defense in red, and they're playing each other in a competitive fashion. What was interesting in the way that worked was, actually I should back up. I didn't like that initially. I liked it after the fact. I didn't like it initially. I worried about it impacting competition, right? If I'm on the red team and you're on the red team, we're both on the same team. If I'm on the red team, you're on the white team, suddenly this is real deal. If it's just offenses in one color and defense in the other, that's really no different than practice. And I worry about the competition not feeling like a game in the same kind of way. I fully admit I was wrong. I watched the game play out, and that's not how it shook out at all. I watched the game play out and watched a bunch of different guys clearly being hyper competitive, trying to earn their spots. I could go down a list. We've got a couple standouts to talk about in a second, but I think that was actually ends up being a genius move by Willie Fritz, where Ainsworth here was wrong in that he could mix and match who was on the field, what lineman combination, what quarterback running back combination, what skill guys, what defensive secondary lineup was out there. He could mix and match all that on the go because it was always defense in red, always offense in white, as opposed to having, Manjack in red and having Sam Brown in white and not to be able to get them on the field at the same time, right? It's a good move by Fritz. I would have been wrong. I frankly, in my head, I was like, what are we doing here? And then I admit, by the end of the game, I realized very quickly I was wrong. Willie Fritz is right amongst a bunch of other things, but one thing he was really right about was to get the dang ball to one Parker Jenkins. Now, in a game where it felt like every running back kind of got even carries, or at least evenly called carries, Parker Jenkins looked like the real deal. Now, we talked before somewhat ad nauseum about how Fritz and Iman Yagavi and frankly Kevin Barbay to some degree too have all utilized the running back very, very effectively at various stops, whether it's App State or Mississippi State for Barbay, or with Tajay Spears at Tulane for Nyagavi and Fritz. This is the kind of offense we're going to lean on the running back a lot. I think you're going to see some Parker Jenkins, some Tony Mathis, some Stacey Sneed. I like Sergio Snyder, too, for what it's worth on Saturday. He had a couple big fun runs. Brought some contact with him, too. But Parker Jenkins had that extra gear that you need out of an elite running back to run this kind of offense with. Jenkins' weekend was highlighted by a 60-yard touchdown run, right? And obviously, it's hard to look past that. I mean, that's the highlight from the weekend from everyone. I mean, Sports Center kind of things, right? But I do think it's worth pointing out that in a more fine detail minutia, the setup on the play was beautiful. It's a zone left. Whole defense is going left. He's going left. The offense is zone blocking left. He gets a great block out of the left guard, I believe was Tank Jenkins, and the right guard, Tank Jenkins, and the right side tight end, washing stuff down at the line of scrimmage at linebacker level. He makes one cut and accelerates out of the cut beautifully on down the field, slips through what might have been a tackle, might not have been, did not get ruled a tackle in this game. Slips through it for a 60-yard scamper into the end zone after we burst out of that cut. Having that elusive speed in and out of cuts is it makes him so exciting. I talked about the very first time we saw him hit the field against Sam Houston State, how his shift from first to fourth gear is so quick. I really think that that's going to continue to be an important factor in what he brings to the Houston Cougars, and he showed it on full display on Saturday. Now, if he is the offensive star of the game, the defenses has to be A.J. Haulcy. A.J. Haulcy, had 20-something tackles in a game at New Mexico a couple years ago. Led Houston tackles once or twice last year. And in a game where, frankly, the defense felt ahead of the curve, and we'll talk some in a second about why that's probably normal and natural. A.J. Haulcy came through, was in the right place at the right time a couple times, had a big-time pick over the middle where he jumped a 6'7" tight end's skinny post, Malik Carr's skinny post in the middle. A.J. Haulcy jumps it and beats him on a jump ball. You saw him lay a couple of gigantic hits in the backfield at the line of scrimmage. He was everywhere. When A.J. Haulcy was on the field, you knew it. And I think that's the kind of impact player that Houston thought they were getting in the transfer portal a year ago. He's clearly got the size, got the speed, has caught up to the Big 12 game some, and man, oh man, did it show up in a big kind of way for the Houston Cougars on Saturday. Really enthusiastic about the kind of stuff that A.J. Haulcy brought. Frankly, even just, and I'm going to say that he was coaching up Maurice Williams III, the Houston star incoming freshman from Shadow Creek, as a safety, had the other pick of the game, sprinting out to the back of the end zone to get a batted ball and bring that home. I'm going to count that as playing with Haulcy. I mean, obviously, Mo Williams is a highly touted recruit, did all his things on his own, and I don't mean to say he couldn't have done it otherwise, but that's the same kind of energy we saw at Haulcy. And frankly, at first glance, before you saw him pop up with the football, I kind of thought it was Haulcy. Like just the way he was moving was so similar. Haulcy is a little bit thicker. As soon as he popped up, like, oh, that's 27. Oh, that's Mo Williams. I get that. But clearly I'm excited about it because the safety play in this defense that Shieldwood and Willie Fritz are running is going to be really important. You're going to see them all over the field, one high, one low. Sometimes you can have three of them on the field, two low, one high, all kinds of different stuff back and forth. And to see the energy they brought is going to be important. And it was great to see it early on. Now, Houston is looking to build over the course of hopefully not very long a championship caliber roster, right? This is a rebuilding process in the program. And if you're looking to build a roster for your small business, you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs brings you the show today, and it's also a place to be when you and your small business are looking to hire quality professionals for the right role. Check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all the tools you need to find the right professional for your team, like the A.J. Haulcy, the Mo Williams of the world, faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively looking for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn knows that people in those businesses are wearing so many different hats, they might not have the time or resources to make hires. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make that process easier. They just launched this new feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/locked-on-college. It's linkedin.com/locked-on-college today. All right, so the defense was a big, big part of this one. I could go on and on and on about it, player by player, and I got a few guys I want to cite, and then we'll talk about the offense of the course of the week too. But I got a couple guys I got to give credit to on the defense. But to my offensive football junkies, A, you're not alone. I'm one of those as well. But B, it does make some sense that the defense is ahead right now. Right, the defense being ahead right now, and Willie Fritz said as much in the post game afterwards, is a function of having 15 spring practices. Defensive football is a whole lot of learning the scheme, learning the rules, reading, reacting, making plays. Right, and frankly, when you spend 15 days preparing for one opponent, yourself, you spend those 15 days learning the defense, learning the rules, learn the reactions, enacting those reactions, reacting and making plays. I don't mean to say simpler in the sense that it's easier, because it's not. In modern football, defense is very hard to play because of all the different limits they put on physicality and things like that. Like, they only let you do so much on the defensive side of the football. But in terms of like the on-paper duties, defense can at times seem simpler, right? Because it's as simple as, all right, this guy moves this way, you go there and make the play. If these guys move that way, you go there and make the play, or whatever, right? And it's not, I'm dumbing it down some, but truthfully, the hard part is then making the play, not necessarily, I don't know, understanding on paper where the play is supposed to be made, right? So the defense a little bit ahead. I thought it was really impressive, and I would say I thought the interior three of the offensive line played all pretty well. But the defensive front, in a year where we're still figuring out who's going to be where on it, looked really, really good, right? A.J. Holmes, right, at defensive tackle, playing a big, big role up front, stopping a lot of different guys in their tracks, eating up a lot of blocks and opening up things for guys like Talik Robbins. So Talik Robbins looked really, really impressive as well. Was really cool to see Keith Cooper out there making plays. Keith Cooper is originally from Dickinson. He's a very athletic 6'5", 6'6" interior defensive lineman. He was at Tulane with Fritz, came over in the movement over to Houston there. And there was frankly some question in the transfer portal and those kind of message boardy type of things. Like, could he make that transition to Big 12 football? He looked every single bit of a Big 12 football player on Saturday. Sorry, I'm recording on a Sunday. On Saturday, I was intrigued by it because I wanted to see him play last year. Brandon Mack missed basically all of 2023 with a shoulder injury. 6'3" and change, 240, 250, big, strong, fast, long arm, athletic. Originally from Montgomery, Alabama, went to Ole Miss, never really got to see the field there because of a bunch of injury things going on there. And just kind of felt like, is this guy ever going to put it together? Well, on Saturday, we got to see him without his hand in the dirt. He's playing more of an outside linebacker, an odd front kind of position. Think about like what Nelson Caesar did standing up last year, that kind of stuff. And frankly, he was really active, and I like the way he is flying around and making plays. And he didn't always make the tackle and made plays as much as he turned the ball back to his buddies. I talked about, edge players, guys setting edges and turning it back to your teammates or turning it back to your buddies. He did a really, really good job of that for a guy that, frankly, I don't know. I don't know what the thought would have been like. Could he do that? Right? He's a defensive end by trade, pass rusher by trade. Couldn't have told you whether or not he'd be able to. Right? I thought he was impressive in what looked like a new role to me. The whole front seven, frankly, I could go on and on about. For instance, I think I was worried about how many plays Xavier Stillman could get in a row. The rumor out on him was at 6'3", 315 or whatever. He was going to have, to take, he'll be 3 or 4 plays come off. I thought he looked like I think that's all bogus. I watched him play on Saturday, and his size jumps off the screen. He's clearly able to play and go side to side laterally. He did a great job at a number of different times of tracking the ball down from the backside and kind of being there to meet it when it came back. He's involved in a bunch of gang tackles for sure. Psyche Strong continues to just look like a different type of athlete out there. 6'6", 260, and every bit of those long arms are used to pass rush and stuff like that. And they took advantage of what we'll talk about later this week. Houston needs some tackle help, and I think that looks like the weak point of the offense right now are the two tackles. And so I admit that the pass rush got to take advantage of some guys that might be in, out over the skis a little bit or in deeper water than they swam in before, or whatever. But on the whole, I think I'd be more concerned if they were just playing those guys 50-50. These guys dominated the edges of the line of scrimmage, and I think that's really, really important, especially when, the game plan for Houston's offense is going to be to clearly put those guys in conflict, running a bunch of different zone schemes or counters, and try and mess with their reads. The defensive line looked very, very strong and very, very able to handle all of that. Now, in the back half of the defense, I mentioned AJ Haulcy at the top. Obviously, we could keep going on and on about him, but to give other guys some shine, I thought Latravion McCutcheon, the linebacker. I always want to get those two, both brothers' first names mixed up. I thought even a couple big plays or did not look like a sophomore kind of making those plays. Really, really impressed with his size and speed across the board there. If you are looking for him, I don't think he had a last name on the back of his jersey, 47. Looks like he's put on some good weight. He's listed at 6'2", 210. I think he looks closer to 225 right now. Maybe just jacked up. I thought he looked like a pretty good size linebacker, especially for a sophomore. Tracked the ball side to side very well. And again, the Houston offense was trying to run the ball a lot, and he did a great job of coming downhill and then tracking it to make sure it didn't, get outside of the box there. I mentioned the safety play. I continue to come back to it. If we're going to pick a corner, I thought Jalen Emery had the best day of any of the corners. Got his hands on the football a lot of times, shut down some pretty talented receivers a lot of times. And frankly, kind of was the kind of corner that Houston had to kind of go away from. They tried to look off and stuff like that. At 5'10", he's not going to outsize you at any position or whatever. Juwan Gaston had a good day, but I really think that I'm going to stick with the safeties and the defensive line having the best day on the defense side of the ball. They probably had a fairly advantageous first day or first game or spring game, whatever we want to call it, because they didn't have to see who projects to be the starting quarterback at the University of Houston. And I want to talk about what he will bring to this offense in a moment. But first, let's talk a little bit about, I should say, a lot of different games happening right now over at FanDuel, because right now, that's it for Houston Cougar football. We don't see them again until the fall. However, it's playoff time in the NBA, NHL, baseball's back in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super, super, super easy to use. Now, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, now I mentioned the defense had a really good day. And I mentioned we're going to be talking about this game a lot this week. We're talking about the offense without Donovan Smith over the course of the week. I do think Zion Chris brings some interesting intangibles. Thought McMickle kind of stole the show for the other guys. WLA had a couple big deep balls. Like, oh man, what's he got going? Like, all those kind of things. But truthfully, I think is fairly easy to say, even when he didn't step on the field, having seen what he did last year, Donovan is still the starter. I think we can safely say that. And B, I think it's interesting to hypothesize what a full speed Donovan Smith will bring to this exact same offense soon, right? Now, Donovan is recovering from a labrum surgery. He was involved in the spring, did a bunch of different mental reps in the spring. Multiple coaches talked on the telecast on ESPN Plus about how he was very mentally checked into spring ball and took all the mental reps and so on. But with that surgery, he wasn't able to do any throwing. He's not able to take any contact, obviously. And so his reps were fairly limited. I will say that I think this offense does favor his skill set more than what Houston ran last year. Now that we've seen a lot of running back and a lot of RPOs and a lot of zone read kind of stuff that gets any run that Donovan's doing downhill into gaps, very quick, decisive reads. You saw Zion Chris a couple times make like one read, two read out. Those kinds of simplified things where Donovan gets to just be the best player on the field. He gets to be the football player he can be in a way that I don't know that he always got to be last year, right? I also think it's worth pointing out that on those zone read kind of concepts, what you're going to see Donovan do a lot of times is take the extra hitch, giddy up step before pulling it because A, he's shown he can hold on to the read for that long, and B, it puts defenses more in conflict and can kind of make the read almost a little bit smoother, right? Not always a little bit smoother, but almost a little bit smoother when he does it. I'm excited about the way he fits into this game, though, when he starts playing it, because so many RPO reads we saw were quick read of the handoff, and there was clearly a read in the pre-snap, right? A read in the pre-snap where he makes that read, pulls the ball back, and lets it fly, okay? Now, there were moments where I think McMickle threw a fade route when Manjack ran a hook route, or actually might have that vice versa mixed up. We saw a couple different times where the guys pulled the handoff read out and just flipped it deep for this fade route and that kind of stuff. I think that assuming he learns the reads, and I think it's safe to say he's already spent a spring doing the mental reps that he will, right? Don is a smart kid. I think that it's safe to say that those kinds of things play to his strengths because it's simple, quick pre-snap reads, and then once he's pulled it, he can show off the arm talent and let his guys go get the ball. He's got some really talented receivers out there making plays. I mean, Kai Muse, I thought, was really, really impressive just in returning the football, right? Like, great speed and burst there. He ran one reverse and had some good action in it, too. Really liked what you saw out of Sam Brown and Joseph Manjack, but you could tell by the way those guys are running routes, not getting the ball, that they want their starter. They want QB1 Donovan Smith out there with them. And I don't blame them. I understand that frustration. Zion Chris will be good. I think McMickle is going to put some pressure on that 2 spot. I really do. He had some stuff in his game that I thought was interesting to see out of a third string quarterback. He'll make plays. He'll come out of nowhere. And frankly, I think he's a better athlete and quarterback than your third or fourth string guy. So I don't know how they figure that out. And then Lucas Coley continues to be a leader. So we didn't even get into Indy, Weijue, or anybody else, but I think that it's fair to say that the story of the offense was not necessarily in the passing game about who was there, but who wasn't. And who wasn't there was Donovan. I know that he's not every fan's favorite quarterback because he's not like Case Keenum. He's not, future Hall of Famer. He's not Andre Ware, didn't win the Heisman. Like, everyone had these lofty expectations from that position. But while I can assure you that he'll be better in year 2 than he was in year 1, I also would point out that he had a better year 1 than he often gets credit for. And the things he does well are these things that this offense is going to be doing, right? I know that I'm typically the optimist. There are other people out there that are the pessimists that also create Houston Cougar content. And sometimes people say, see, they're so much more right than you because they're, and things go, when things go bad, right? People don't come to me when things go right. They go to them when, see, Parker, you were wrong. They're right when things go wrong. But I will say that assuming the recovery is seamless and assuming there are no other injuries, because it sounds like he might have been playing with this a little bit last year, that Donovan having the kind of athletes he has. We didn't even talk about Malik Carr. Malik Carr, guys, that guy's a giant. Number 6, tight end, looks like he's a different division than everyone else. I mean, he's a giant playing tight end. That kind of target in the flat, that's the kind, I mean, we know from last year how much that Donovan likes that like short area in the middle of the field, right? We can just kind of quickly dump it out when he needs to check down. Malik Carr might have 100 catches this year. I mean, I like Burns a lot. Both tight ends. I don't know how you pick which one. I guess there were 2 tight end sets in the field a lot too. Somebody told you that would happen. But those guys all play into what Donovan does well. And so I think while the offense had a rough day on Saturday, a couple fun plays on the whole, though not the most consistent day, that Donovan's going to have a pretty good time. I will say, this is me being pessimistic or realist or whatever, I will say the one thing that worries me, and we'll talk about this week as we continue to talk about the spring game all week long, because there's only football going on. We got to have something to talk about football, right? It's only football we got going. I guess we can talk about the draft and Patrick Paul and stuff like that too. I digress. Come on, Parker. I do think that if the tackles are the weak spot of the football team when they start the season and we don't get those guys coached up and ready to roll, that kind of pressure off the edge where it collapses Donovan Smith to run up the middle, it will be interesting to see. Last year, edge pressure impacted him a lot more than pressure at the middle for sure. I thought the middle of the offensive line looked really good. I thought the tackles looked like the weakest spot of the offense, and part of that's because part of the offense looked really good, and the running backs and stuff like that. But if the tackles are the weak spot come fall, we may have to figure out some ways to chip with tight ends or chip with running backs and get some extra help in there, because Donovan, the edge pressure is a big deal. And, I would be happy for him to prove me wrong and grow through that. Like you'd see that with Deion Chris out there. They did some different sprint outs and stuff to try and negate that. There are ways to kind of work away from that. It'll be interesting to see what Houston does. But that was the only thing that gave me pause about like this offense being very well crafted for Don. It's like, oh, wait a second. From a roster perspective, he kind of needs those 2 guys. Now, if you were at the game, if you think I'm crazy, if you're looking for the Ooze on episode 8, that's a bonus episode. Looking for anything going on with Houston Cougars, let me know in the comments down below, or find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, any social media platform at Painsworth 512, PAINSWORTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all of your favorite social media handles. Thank you all so much for listening today. Locked On Cougs is your daily Houston Cougar podcast. Thank you all for making us the #1 daily Houston Cougar podcast out there. Locked On Cougs, proud and Locked On podcast. Now, them is your team, our Houston Cougars, each and every day, even in the springtime. Go Cougs.